They could scout the terrain by entering the eyes of an eagle, and the Wildling tribe shapeshifter learned this from observing from the sky. In front, there is only an old man in the small house, guarding 8 excellent horses. As an undercover agent, Snow, who had infiltrated the Wildlings, said, "The old man is a stable hand hired by the Night's Watch and will be protected by the black-cloaked man." Listening to the Wildlings' plan to kill the man and steal the horses, Snow, who had a kind heart, intervened, saying that the old man posed no threat, and they should only take the horses and gold. However, the plundering Wildlings would not listen to his advice.
Spread out, surround the hut. Moving!
Seeing the Wildlings approaching, the old man mounted his horse and started galloping away. Just as Ygritte raised her bow to shoot, Snow once again disrupted her aim, but because of the presence of the shapeshifter, the old man was ultimately captured. To prevent any leaks, the undercover agent insisted on killing him but required Snow to do it.
Come on, boy! Come on!
With Ygritte's arrow instantly revealing her allegiance, even though she knew Snow would never fully integrate into the Wildlings, she was willing to be his enemy for the sake of their relationship.
He's one of them! Not gonna die for one of them!
Because Snow has been trained in combat since childhood, the shapeshifter is simply no match for him. At the moment of being pierced through the heart, consciousness instantly entered the body of an eagle. Watching the swooping eagle, Snow was completely defenseless and could only escape on horseback in the end. The next day, Ygritte caught up with Snow, standing across from him with a bow full of resentment, waiting for a reasonable explanation for his betrayal. Because Snow himself carried the burden of trading his life for the opportunity to go undercover as the captain, he had also taken the sacred oath to protect the wall. He stated that he had to go back.
I know you won't hurt me.
You know nothing, Jon Snow.
I know I love you. I know you love me. I have to go home now.
The Thens, a cannibalistic tribe, also relied on the undercover agent to find Torment. Knowing that Snow had betrayed the tribe and killed the undercover agent and his comrades, the king beyond the wall sent the Thens to help attack the wall. Although they had a shared goal, Torment and Ygritte still deeply despised this cannibalistic tribe.
You really ought to try, Crow.
Upon returning to the wall, Snow immediately faced judgment, as the Lord Commander's party had not yet returned. A new recruit served as the acting instructor. No matter how Snow explained, he couldn't clarify his involvement in the death of the Lord Commander. Finally, he confessed to having feelings for a girl. Actually, the new recruit instructor and other lieutenants wanted to put him in a deadly situation, but only the senior maester stood by Snow's side. In the end, he revealed the entire plan of the king beyond the wall. Although some individuals didn't believe him, they still respected the senior maester. On the other side, Torment, who had grown stronger, started slaughtering villages along the wall with the Thens in search of a fortified castle.
You know how to get to Castle Black? Go tell the crows at Castle Black.
Because the Wildlings excelled in outdoor warfare, the new recruit instructor was well aware of this fact. The maester also stated that they only had 100 men at present and couldn't easily go out to confront them, so they decided to keep everyone guarding the castle. At that moment, the wall remembered a sound of a horn, and 2 individuals who had managed to escape from Craster's keep returned to the castle. As it turned out, after the Lord Commander was killed, the righteous side was captured by Carl and had seized all the food and women, because Snow had told the king beyond the wall that there were 1,000 men stationed at Castle Black. But if the Wildlings beyond the wall captured these traitors and learned that the castle's defense was less than 1,000 men, they would launch their attack even earlier. Therefore, they had to eliminate the traitors before the Wildlings could do so. After a few days of training, the new recruit instructor saw that Snow had gained the trust of the men. However, he feared losing the election for the new Lord Commander, so he decided not to organize the expedition. Instead, he let Snow find volunteers himself, and at the same time, he hoped that Snow wouldn't return.
If the Night's Watch are truly brothers, then Lord Commander Mormont was our father. He lived and died for the Watch, and he was betrayed by his own men, stabbed in the back by cowards. He deserved far better. All we can give him now is justice. Who will join me? Thank you, brothers.
Carl, who declared himself king, saw that the women had given birth to another male infant, which had to be sacrificed to the others. Helplessly, Roose Bolton had to take it away. Despite a slight trace of goodwill in his heart, he ultimately left the child in the snow. While Roose Bolton was returning to the camp, he was humiliating the imprisoned ghost. A gust of cold wind made him feel the strength of the others. The white-haired general of the others carried the male infant through the icy valley and arrived at the central headquarters of their leaders. He placed the child on an altar surrounded by ice pillars. The Night King, the ultimate leader of the others, was the first shapeshifter created by the children of the forest using dragon glass to combat the initial invasion of mankind. Because he was transformed by magic-infused dragon glass, weapons made of dragon glass were ineffective against him. He was also the source of power for all the others and whites. His own magic was ice-based and could extinguish any flame that approached him. Unlike whites, who were reanimated from dead bodies, the others were consciously raised from a young age and could directly obey the Night King's commands, so the kidnapped boys were transformed from a young age. Similar to Daenerys Targaryen's affinity for fire, they both required magic and blood infusion. The birth of Daenerys Targaryen's 3 dragons was the result of the fusion of Khale's body and her own affinity for fire. On the other hand, the arrival of the Night King was the result of the fusion of a male infant and the element of ice. Although the army of the others cannot speak, the Night King, being the former 13th Lord Commander of the Night's Watch, possesses knowledge of tactics and strategic planning. He has a complete plan to eradicate humanity. Beyond the Desperate Wall, a massive army of whites has assembled, and 90 Wildling tribes are closing in. However, the Black Brothers guarding the wall have now divided into 2 factions, one loyal and one traitorous. In order to avenge the fallen Lord Commander, Snow leads a group of willing comrades to intercept the traitors before the Wildlings arrive. After reconnaissance, Snow's side discovers that they are outnumbered, with 8 men against 11, though the rebels are intoxicated. Their leader Carl was once the highest-ranked assassin on the bounty list. Despite their drunken state, the rebels eventually succumb to defeat. Snow corners the leader, Carl, inside a building, but the top-ranked mercenary is not to be underestimated. After several rounds of combat, Carl sees Snow's vulnerability, just as he raises his hand to strike the final blow.
How to fight with honor!
A woman whom he had previously oppressed stabs him with a dagger. Meanwhile, Roose Bolton, who had escaped earlier, is killed by Snow's dire wolf on the way. With both the Wildlings and the others approaching, Snow looks at Craster's wives and suggests seeking refuge in the Night Fort. However, the elderly man states that they are all tired of being mistreated and decides to find their own way. Upon Snow's successful return after eliminating the traitors, the new recruit instructor, unable to accept the humiliation, picks a fight with Ghost, claiming that there is no place for beasts here and they must be kept in cages. Despite Snow's dissatisfaction with the instructor, he advises him to warn everyone to prepare for the defense of the wall. As they return, they already see the Wildling campfire not far away. However, the instructor dismisses it as a fantasy, believing that the wall has stood for thousands of years without anyone being able to breach it. All the commanders look down on Snow, and the instructor further orders him to stay at the wall and keep watch with Sam until the full moon. That night, Gilly, hiding in the house for safety, being a Wildling herself, hears the approaching Tormund before she can warn the others. The Thens burst into the house, and none of the Black Brothers present survive. With 105 fighting against 90 tribes totaling 100,000 people, it becomes the desperate battle of the Wildlings, a rare event in 1,000 years on the wall. The king beyond the wall had once said that if 100,000 people reached the wall, he would unleash an unprecedented signal of fire. At the top of the desperate wall, there are only 80 men preparing for battle. Ygritte, who has already climbed over the wall and hidden in a side gate, can clearly see that there are only about 20 men below the castle. With the command from the Thens chieftain, the small squad begins charging towards the castle from behind the wall. At the same time, the 100,000 strong army at the front gate starts emerging from the forest and pushing forward.
Everyone else, hold! No! Down below! Light them up!
Seeing the ambush from behind the wall, the instructor has no choice but to personally go down and join the resistance. Although there are archers blocking the front gate, they don't have enough distance, and the Wildlings step back a few steps to get out of range. Because the defense at the back gate consists of only 20 men, and with sharpshooter Ygritte leading the way, Tormund and the Thens quickly reach the base of the wall. With the roar of the mammoths, the giants at the front also join the attack with their main forces. Seeing the 100,000 strong army in front of them, the second-in-command becomes so frightened that he starts babbling incoherently. He claims that everything in front of them is an illusion and still refuses to believe in the existence of giants. Seeing the second-in-command paralyzed by panic and completely unable to command, Gren lies and says that the instructor inside the castle needs reinforcements, successfully luring him away to the top of the wall. Snow, who is now alert and conscious of the battle, takes command. Although the number of archers is limited, Snow calmly divides them to disrupt the climbing Wildlings. Although the wall is hundreds of meters high and regular people cannot shoot arrows from below, the giants are well prepared. The Thens, known as the fiercest tribe among the Wildlings, combined with Ygritte's precise archery, quickly create a one-sided situation inside the castle. The terrified second-in-command quickly hides underground, and Pipar, forced to hide and shoot cold arrows from a dark corner, is killed by Ygritte as soon as he shows himself for the second time. Meanwhile, outside the wall, the giants with their mammoths have already reached the entrance of the main passage and have placed a tension rope on the outer gate. The ice-covered mammoth is tied to the tension rope, and the giant holds a specially made lever weighing 10,000 pounds. As the situation becomes more dire at the bottom of the desperate wall, the outer gate of the only tunnel is about to be breached. Once both gates are opened, the 100,000 strong Wildling army will flood through like a torrent. Unstoppable, the two commanders inside the castle find themselves on a collision course. Although the Black Brother instructor is well trained, he is ultimately no match for the supernatural strength of Tormund.
You must fucking gate!
At that moment, everyone still on the battlefield has one goal in mind: to defend the castle gate with their lives. They cannot let the Wildling army cross the wall, as it would bring unimaginable devastation to the people in the south. A makeshift oil barrel bomb temporarily eases the crisis at the gate. However, one of the giants, in an attempt to retrieve the mammoth, is struck in the heart by a specially made crossbow bolt from the top of the wall. With only 2 giants left in their tribe, the remaining giant becomes enraged upon seeing his fallen comrade and starts forcefully pulling at the gate. The mishandling of the oil barrel at the top of the wall causes it to explode. Sam, who has come up, reports that all the commanders have fallen, and the castle cannot hold out for much longer.
You have the wall! Come on, let's fight! Come, brothers, now fight with me!
Might as well enjoy our last night, right, boys?
20 arrows in him already. We hold the gate! Night gathers, now my watch begins. I shall wear no crowns and win no glory. Shall not end until my death.
The Night's Watch are all tough men, even though their chances of victory are slim. Snow instructs Sam to release Ghost, and he himself leads the charge into the battlefield. As soon as Ghost is released from the cage, he instantly enters a frenzy mode. The then chieftain becomes energized upon seeing Snow's arrival. Due to the difference in size and strength, Snow quickly finds himself at a disadvantage. In the end, he manages to cleverly finish off the then leader, but when he turns around, he sees Ygritte with an arrow drawn on her bow.
Do you remember that cave? We should have stayed in that
go back there.